And she's awesome and a wonderful person.
So let's jump down to, item 4. No, item 5, the 1063 project. So I sent everybody an email, I think, after
Is this the big packet that we talked about last time?
the meeting,
Or is there another?
an email I sent after was the public planning board public hearing. I sent an email. I sent an email after
Good
that.
evening.
Hey, congratulations.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I read that.
Dad?
Good evening.
Good
You guys hear me?
We can see you.
Got the wrong
Can
guy.
you hear us? Can you hear us? You hear us? Steve, can you hear us?
Steve's a dad. Is Steve's a dad?
Chad, I'm trying to join too. Can you see that?
Steve and Garrett?
Everywhere.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
they're
I
fresh
can
out
hear
the
you
box.
guys now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm closing that. Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got my replacement.
Yes, we can hear you, but you can't hear us.
It is a whole different
I
world.
can
That
hear
was
you
clear.
guys now. Yep.
Oh, you can? Okay, good.
Am I trying to join or can you see me trying to join? Yeah. Can you let me in?
Little immune
We were
support
just
team.
solving some technical difficulties.
Great.
All right, and congratulations on being a new dad.
We're going to
Thank
Ellsworth
you.
for a quad meet on a Wednesday. We're not gonna get home till midnight. We move quick, we might get home by like 11.
Having sleep at school.
Sorry about my,
Obviously, we brought us 2 hours.
today.
Oh, put him right in the chair.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that, your dad.
Send to the.
Yeah.
police. Sorry.
It's got that sort of glazed look at his eye.
He's probably happy.
Oh, you're crying upstairs?
Right there. I see crying down this way.
Good luck.
He can't hear us.
Easy to ignore.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
All right. Where are we, Mr. Chair?
We're gonna go to a review of the RSC2. Steve did a walkthrough of that.
There was a specific one sent out.
Yeah. Everybody should have sent that around.
I didn't see it.
I didn't see that either. Really?
No, I didn't see it either. I'll get my computer back.
It comes in before Monday.
I didn't see that.
Oh. Nobody seen it?
I've seen the community one, but not the RC2 one.
Yeah. I should say, well,
Yeah. Let me send you now.
All right.
So hang on, Steve, hang on, there was some glitch. Likely.
You have 2 email addresses, you guy and another one,
Yeah, I'm not using, trying to get away from
you guy.
the road runner.
Oh.
So it's Brody guy. Gmail,
What's the, what's the name I would search on that email? What's your
Brody guy 76 and
roadie guy? ROA?
RRHOG. RHOGY. Just sent
Got it, okay.
so I got the updates on the trail committee we sent out about the 1063 meeting.
Here we go.
Community-wide study on the 6th of January.
He just sent another copy,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah,
There it is.
should be 2 attachments of it.
Let's see, in attachments.
Jinx, you owe me a beer.
I have the attachment. I have 3
I was gonna
attachments.
say I have the beer.
Oh, wait.
PDFs.
Let's see the.
2 PDFs to it.
Can you hear us okay, Steve?
Yeah, for the most part, I think as long as one person maybe talks at a time.
Say it again, got it? There you are.
Are you guys seeing the attachments?
I see that there is an attachment.
This is the draft RSU two accessible trail design package. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see the attachments.
An attachment.
I have two attachments, two PDFs.
You want to send them out, Chris?
Here, I'll send it to you directly from the attachment.
He's right.
Another one?
Yeah.
Sure, no subject.
The other attachment, just the maps again, so this really gives you. I don't know what I just said again.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Got it?
Got it.
Okay. All right, Steve, I think we're ready to go, so I think maybe just
Yeah.
let's do a walkthrough. Sort of basically.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. So hopefully now you all have it. And certainly there's still time, nothing's set in stone here, so please review and get me back comments, if there's other stuff that comes up as you look at this after we talk about it. But essentially here is an accessible trail system design package for RSU 2. So the beginning, if you've already looked at the community feasibility study, the beginning, the first like 2 pages should look familiar, where there's some background information. Then it jumps into a purpose and need statement. Generally, RTP and the grants, the bond and the grants you're looking to apply for. Why is this project important type thing? So that's what this briefly touches on. There's lots of reasons why it's important. I'm sure you could write a lot on it. Again, the methodology is probably similar to the feasibility study, where we're just, providing a little bit of context around the work that was done, in case people are curious about what we did. So, and this one goes into a little bit more detail than the feasibility study, because, it talks about the fact that I brought some tools out there to measure stuff. And we also looked at some of the accessibility standards during the design, putting the design package together, the existing conditions, and essentially there's like 4 trails here. We tend to label trails with like a number, and I also give them like a name. And by no means does that name have to stick as you develop these trails, right? But essentially there's the quote unquote field loop around the fields, which is not an existing trail. So the existing conditions mostly talks about the terrain, not necessarily a trail itself. You've got the snowmobile trail, got the orchard trail, and then you've got what I just call the middle school connector, which is like a short little segment that kind of connects segments 101 and 102 up near the middle school. If you flip to the like appendix A, like near the back, there'll be maps, and so that'll help explain that a little bit better. And then the design recommendations. We had a meeting sometime in the last year, I forget when, but I know I swung by and we talked about everything. And so here with RSU 2 in particular, accessible, universal accessibility or not, the trails are gonna see a high level of use, and the terrain is like difficult, it's flat and it's wet. And so there needs to be a significant amount of improvement to sustainably, be able to provide recreation for folks. So the recommendations are basically about bringing in gravel fill, and then drainage type features. And so the prescriptions section, which comes after that, proposed descriptions, the description of prescriptions and features, that describes each of the prescriptions, so there's the aggregate, there's one boardwalk, there's culverts, there's ditches, there's some ramps that need to be built, and some areas of trail that need to be turnpiked. The permitting and compliance is a pretty important one to look at, because this project is about, the whole intent here is to be ready to be shovel ready once you get some funding. So I don't think that there is a ton of permitting and compliance. We have no streams we're crossing, so there's no PBRs. The trail width still conforms to the exemptions for the stormwater, for stormwater permitting for the state. So unless there's any town level stuff, I don't think there's any permitting involved here, but it'd be good to check with your code enforcement folks.
Yeah, we
And-
should, I think there is a standard about moving a certain amount of soil requires a permit. So if we're gonna be,
A town ordinance?
yep,
Okay, yeah, that sort of stuff, yeah, your earth moving is often at your town level.
but we're not anywhere near shoreline zoning, so he kind of has to give us a permit.
Awesome, and hopefully, I mean, I would share this design package with them, which talks about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
If that person has some comments, of course we can, as long as nothing's like totally extensive, as in like, oh, we need to redo this entire thing, we can handle those. Procurement and construction, we included some guidance on that because you're hoping to go after some funding here. And so here's some.
Steve, I have one question on sort of.
Yep.
It's in a couple of places when you're describing the trails, the width. You say, sort of, one point you say 5 feet wide, and then 12. Or to 12 feet wide. So I was trying to.
12 feet would be the corridor. So how wide you need to cut everything back for that trail, for everything. The trail itself is 5 feet wide. Or that's how it should be described. If it's not, then I certainly should change that. But the tread where people would walk would be 5 feet wide. But some of these prescriptions, like the ditching, that's another 2 feet wide. Plus there's some cut slopes when you build the ditch. Plus you want to make sure all the vegetation is clear far enough back that it's not encroaching on the trail. So that 12-foot width should be the corridor width, essentially, where all the work would occur as you build this thing and where you're doing the maintenance, not necessarily where people are traveling. All of these were recommended to be 5 feet wide. The only one recommended as a universal access trail was the field trail. The one Trail 100, after some discussions, not having universal accessibility on the other trails could help you save a little bit of money. You're still going to have to do all these prescriptions. So you're still bringing in aggregate. Maybe you could bring in a little less aggregate. In the descriptions, I talk about this a little bit more, where on the snowmobile and the orchard trail and the middle school connector, you still need to do a lot of stuff because it's wet and it's flat. But maybe you can not necessarily do as much as you would do with the universal accessible trail. Part of that reasoning was it was really easy to break off Trail 100, the field loop, as a universal accessible trail and just say, hey, this is our universal accessible trail. The rest of the trails are not universal accessible, and there's a very clear boundary between those trails.
For the other trails which aren't universally accessible, what is sort of the failures that make them not UAT?
Basically the only thing is you might get away with using a little less aggregate. You know, if you're okay with maybe some roots showing, or maybe it getting a little bumpier over time. You could get away with some less aggregate, not doing the sub base and the top coat like you would for the universal accessible trail that you want to be firm and stable and flat.
So, so as you sort of in the report, as you described Trail 101 and 102, are they UAT or not UAT?
They're not, I mean, you could slap the UAT label on them. You essentially have to build UAT trails. You essentially, if you want trails that people are going to use, you need to bring in aggregate. The only thing that would make them not UAT would be their width. But when we talked last, you still wanted 5-foot wide trails. So they are a UAT trail. The only thing you could get away with is maybe using a little less aggregate, but we'd still recommend using a couple inches of aggregate because the soil's so soft and wet. And you're going to have, you know, the intent here is to have a lot of people out there.
So I mean, if we said in our application to RTP that these are all UAT as described, we wouldn't be lying. I mean, we'd be
No.
right.
No, you'd have to build them to the UAT specs, so you'd still want to build them. You'd want to bring in all that aggregate for 101 and 102. It's not like you're going to cut the trail cost in half. There's no way to cut the trail cost in half.
Yeah.
There's no way to take 25% out of the trail cost, really. That's what the site conditions really. The site conditions plus the fact that, hey, this is a school, this is right downtown, this is a trail that we want to promote to the entire community to come out and use. If this was just some hiking trail that was way off on the end of a dirt road, you know, we could get away with less.
This is gonna be our main trunk.
This is the anchor.
What was holding us back?
ANE trunk.
What was the grade? What was holding us back from making it a UAT originally?
I think the only thing.
The grades, the grades, not really. The site's so flat. You know, if you had hillsides and we could go steeper, but we weren't going steeper to meet universal accessibility, then I'd say, oh yeah, we could talk about that. But your site is so flat, like probably the biggest standard in sustainable trails is the half rule, which is essentially you don't want trails to go more than half the prevailing slope. So most of your slopes are under 10% across that site. So you can't really have a trail that goes much steeper than 5% without having to get blown out all the time. And just so happens that being around that 5% is universal accessibility as well. So it wasn't so much that the grades were because of the universal accessibility. The grades are what they are to create a sustainable trail experience. Because it's so flat, you know, anything that starts going fall line is just going to start collecting water. And it's going to need a lot more engineering if you want it to remain in one piece.
Chris, looking at the map here, was there a trail going across that berm originally going across the new drainage ditches originally that you were planning on, or no? I think you had, yeah, you
You
had.
could,
bush hog.
I think we talked about that a little bit at the
I
last
think we
meeting.
talked about not maintaining it, but just being
Yeah.
one that we as a group may try
Like
to do down the road or.
Okay.
I mean,
Like a
you
casual
could mow
offshoot.
it and you know, obviously we talk a little bit about signage in the two reports. And so, you know, as you develop signage, it's something you can include in the system, right, and sign, but generally stay away from like stormwater berms.
Okay.
Yeah, because there is a section of riprap
And-
midway.
There is, yeah.
Where you would have to cross that. I don't know that we can alter that.
Yeah,
other
there's-
than maybe
there's a
putting a
little
little bridge
probably
across or
emergency-
something.
There's
Yeah,
an emergency overflow, and
That's where the grade had gotten
technically
bad.
you'd probably want to talk to whatever engineer designed that. You know, if you wanted to do like a lot of, you know, if you're just gonna mow it and walk on it, that's one thing. But the level of work we're talking about here with like excavators and skid steers and bringing in aggregate, you would want to talk to whoever knows about that drainage system more to know if you actually should do that. So for now, you know, I would recommend, yeah, mow it and use it, but
Yeah, that's what I was thinking that. And there was the concern that if there's ever standing water in there, then maybe we don't want to have people hanging out near places where there's standing water.
Fence it on.
But if there's never really water there, then I figured we could just mow it. If we needed to build a small little bridge or something across that middle section, this could be something that maybe the cross-country team could use to run on, but it's not a general purpose trail for people to use for walking.
Is 5 feet wide enough for, to get for skiing in the wintertime?
5 feet wide is probably not enough for that, but in the wintertime, I feel like if it's a 12-foot corridor, that trail could, even if it's a 5-foot prepared base, the trail could probably be a few feet wider than that. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree, Steve? Like the snowmobile trail where it's going through, if it's, you know, if the base, if the gravel base is 5 feet wide, that doesn't mean that we won't have a little bit more on the sides for wintertime use.
yeah, and I, you know, if that's an edit, if you guys want that, I could certainly add, hey, let's bump the corridor out on some of these segments for better wintertime use. Because yeah, 5 feet is definitely too narrow for skating. But the cord, 12 feet is more like a skating lane, 10 or
Yeah,
12.
12 feet's fine.
Straighten out.
Chris, you know,
So-
how big the, like the Winthrop? How
Wide their trails are. I mean, the full width is 15 feet,
Are they really?
probably.
Yeah.
The court.
at least 10
The
feet.
corridor, the gravel is probably, yeah, probably close to 10 feet. I don't know, maybe 8 feet or something. It's pretty wide.
You want to make it feel like you're walking on a road when you're on the trail, but it's good to have it wide enough to be able to ski through in the wintertime if we want to keep it groomed for that.
Yeah. And 5 feet's plenty wide if you're just doing classic skiing, but if you're skating, you're gonna want wider than that.
Right, if it's a public trail, it's not like you can groom it, keep people off necessarily
No.
for grooming. I guess that's not true, you could ask. For snowshoeing.
Steve, one. I had a question about the connector trail, the 103. Just
Yep.
so. That was, I think, one point where. That was accessibility, maybe problem. Is your recommendation to. Do that grading there related to accessibility or just. General sort of design, because it's, I think you said it's like a 10% pitch, then you'd have that. You'd bring in some sort of earth from other places to change the grade to 5.
Yeah, we recommend an earthen ramp there. Still recommend it at 5%. You know, we could recommend it steeper. 10%'s a little steep. If you look at the accessibility guidelines, they allow I think they allowed 10% for very short pitches, but they allow 8% for slightly longer pitches. So that's something we could look at there too is, but it's, you know, it is like a steep little grade. So bringing in some material and smoothing out that transition, is going to be nice for all the visitors and for the drainage.
How expensive is that to do that? It's something that's,
I'd have to dig into the cost estimate. I don't know off the top of my head, but we made some assumptions. You know, essentially it's a pile of dirt. So whatever the aggregate cost was, it's again, I think it was on the order of like $1,500 or something, probably for one of these earthen ramps. You know, it's a bunch of dirt and then someone doing some earthwork for a day or so, seeding the sides. So, you know, shortening it up is, again, it's not going to cut out the cost by like 50%, but it could shave a little bit off.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it's gonna be a huge savings. And it doesn't sound like the amount is huge either.
No, it's a couple yards of material. It's not a massive amount of material. Just trying to, like, you're basically just building out a little bit of a ramp. You know, one thing I'll say about cost too, right, is like the costs that I'm using are, you know, trying to base everything on professionals, and folks, and, you know, the higher cost that I'm finding for material and that kind of stuff. So the hope is, and usually what we see is, you know, you go after grant funding and when you actually get quotes from contractors, you might have local contractors who their rates might not be as expensive because I'm assuming someone might have to travel there. And they might be able to find material cheaper. So something to keep in mind, right? Like, just because this cost estimate has a number associated with it doesn't mean you have to spend that amount of money. You should go after that amount of money for the grants, and then when you get the actual quotes from everyone, you'll know what stuff costs, and then you can decide if, hey, we have some cost savings. What do we do with that?
So, costs are in appendix B for
Thanks, that's what I was scrolling for. I was going the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah, the numbers should look essentially the same as when we chatted before, except that quote unquote that woods loop 101, 102, 103. I used a little less number, assuming we might use a little less material there if it was not UAT. We do have some signage in there too.
I'm surprised how high that was.
The signage cost?
Yeah,
Again, like that's basing off, like you go out and you buy like a really nice kiosk off one of these prefabricated kiosks. You go and buy really nice metal or carcinite signage. You know, you could put together a kiosk cheaper, you know, with some local carpenters and going down to the hardware store and buying lumber.
It's in the backyard.
But I would hate to give you a cost estimate that says that, and you think you're going to go out and buy really nice kiosks, and then you wonder why they cost a lot more than I told you they would cost.
They're better high than low.
So yeah, that stuff's all based on all really high quality fancy signage. And happy to add some notes and disclaimers about that. So as you have discussions with people, you can say, hey, the reason this number is high is because, you know, we're thinking about buying some sort of fiberglass, or this was based on like the highest cost kiosk out there.
So yeah, I would, if we're gonna be, we're successful grant, we're gonna be spending a significant investment in signage, then I think the thing to emphasize is longevity. And lack of maintenance.
What is, prescriptions cost? I don't know if you've mentioned that.
That's just all of those, that's a total of everything you see above. So the culverts, the ditching, the turnpikes, the earthen ramps, the bridge and boardwalk,
Okay.
and all the aggregate. Or not all the aggregate is totaled, separate. I should move the prescriptions line. It doesn't read well. I apologize. The prescriptions cost line item should fall under culverts, ditching, turnpikes, and
Okay, yeah.
earthen ramps.
Okay, so, yeah.
So you can see like for the field loop and the snowmobile trail, like the numbers are 6,000 and 1,000 because we're talking about just bringing in material. We're talking about bringing in some HDPE culverts. But the prescriptions cost for the woods loop is quite a bit higher because it's accounting for that bridge and boardwalk. Or that boardwalk. I should just get rid of the bridge.
Yeah, get rid of bridge,
Yeah.
All right, boardwalk.
the boardwalk.
So how, the boardwalk would be 5 feet?
Yes.
So that's someplace where that could cause some difficulty for winter usage if it's not wide enough.
That's definitely a place that's going to add cost going wider too.
Yeah,
If, and there's the potential that that entire area could just be turnpike, like we've talked about doing other sections of the trail. That was, the boardwalk is recommended over the water line cut, if everyone can picture where the snowmobile trail, right? That's an old water line there. It looks like an old road. Super wet, you've got all the reed, you've got cattails and stuff.
Right by the
growing in there.
reroute, right before the snowmobile trail reroute.
Yeah, so you'd still cross the same wet thing.
You do, yeah.
We're rerouting it, partially, to keep everything on the property.
The triangle part where the access
Yeah.
right near 104 is. It's that blue wet
And
area.
so, the boardwalk was definitely needed when we're talking about universal accessibility. You might be able to get away with turnpiking there. It just, man, it felt freaking wet in there.
Poison ivy likes to grow there too.
Well, I mean, we're close to the max amount we would hope to, like, at 230,000, we're close to the max. Max 250, yeah,
Bigger go home.
I think, I mean, yeah, I wish there was another town we could.
Well-
They didn't work for that, because I like a boardwalk, on a trail, they're nice,
Yeah.
as long as they're wide enough to be used year round, like, because it would kind of defeat a lot of the purpose of
Well,
only
I
having
mean,
it for half the year.
perhaps we can just say, what would it cost if the boardwalk were 8 feet wide?
Right,
Just a bit wider there.
Our bridges.
That might be sufficient.
It's on the snowmobile trail and they usually have 10-foot bridges.
okay.
And how many
It's
feet is it?
after the split.
Yeah,
So
it's
the-
right where the split is.
Yeah. And that was the other thing, it kind of designated like, hey, when you come to the split, if you go across the boardwalk, that's the non-motorized trail from here on out. You stay right on the snowmobile trail, still on the reroute. That remains snowmobile trail.
Oh, right.
So on the map, I think the snowmobile trail
This
is
is
104.
snowmobile trail. This is walking trail.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The
so-
snowmobile trail has a frozen bypass. The snowmobile trail has a frozen bypass.
This is snowmobile trail.
If you look at the page 27 of the PDF, it's labeled P3. It's the last map.
Yeah.
And if you kind of zoom in, you'll see like there's a split where 104 comes off of 101, and there's a red X basically saying decommission this as a snowmobile trail. Not that you're literally going to decommission that because it's kind of an old road or whatever, but like stop using it, right, as the snowmobile trail and use that 104 reroute that cuts off the triangle. But the boardwalk would
Two
be,
names probably. Scott.
the boardwalk would basically be where that split is, across that wet old water line into the wood line on 101.
Right out of the field.
That little black.
That's that black. Yeah, it's that short black dash.
So how much roughly, like, does boardwalk cost per versus, like, so it just says 100? It's not $100, is that 100 feet?
That's 100 linear feet of boardwalk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever estimate we have on that section would just roughly double, right? And then that would be, I don't know.
Not necessarily double, but
I'm trying to high end it.
Yeah.
100 feet's a bit.
It's a decent amount of space, yeah.
You know, my sense is that we ought to be, I think someone said it down at that end of the table, going big or going home. And one of the reasons I want to make sure that we've asked for enough is because here in Monmouth, we have a project that got caught 2/3 of the way done and now ran out of money due to construction inflation. And so it's a big controversy. Everyone's really, whether you're a supporter or you're opposed to it, dissatisfied with how it turned out. So we want to make sure that this project is well funded from the get-go and that we don't run into a problem where we have to go back and ask for more money.
Yeah, we don't want to go,
We could put that.
I mean, if we can
trail
get it,
to that
and we can
project.
figure out ways
Spend the
to
trail money to finish it.
subsidize it. If we, like, we go big and then let's say we didn't get exactly what we want, we can find ways to save the money through local, like he was mentioning, like, there's gotta be some local
Oh, yeah.
contractors. some
Oh, there are a ton of
people-
people who would.
Yeah, I think there's
It's
ways
totally-
to,
There'd be a ton of people who would totally,
Eagle Scout projects.
or local contractors who own a, gravel pit, who just wanna, have their overhead covered when they deliver grass.
This right here was a
Yeah.
Scout project.
Yeah.
So originally the drainage there was.
So just in terms of cost, just in terms of trying to get maybe a little better idea of what the incremental cost of that would be. So the 100-foot boardwalk, could you sort of cost that? Could you find that, Steve? What that cost
It just,
at the current?
So we use $250 a foot for the boardwalk. So that's all your fasteners, all your lumber. That's a boardwalk built. So remember, I don't know how they're going to change the guidelines for the bond, but for RTP, they wanted, either an engineered design structure or use something that's pre-designed. So we've got Forest Service plans in here for a boardwalk. So, you're looking at a nice boardwalk. I heard someone mention inflation, so we're always trying, I used to not use that high a number for bridges and boardwalks, but that's where things are coming to now. A boardwalk like this, that's a whole bunch of wood, a whole bunch of probably 2x12s for the stringers. I also want to point out too, this cost estimate, I've included a 15% contingency, which at this point I could probably reduce to 10%. When you go to apply for your grant, they might allow you to have a little bit of contingency, but it's something just to think about. Because I don't know, the last I heard is they still hope to get the stuff out this year so people can be applying. But we include that contingency, because I never know when folks might apply, right? So if you take that contingency out, you're only looking at 203,000 in funding. So
For the boardwalk, 250 is linear foot. And you have 100, so it's 25,000. So
Yeah.
if it's a little less.
that's material and lumber. That's
Right, so-
material and labor, I'm sorry.
It says not quite double, maybe 40,000 for a big.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, we're still in
we're still,
that doesn't,
we're not quite out.
It's not a game changer.
Yeah.
It's not a game changer. I mean, I think if
And-
you knock down the contingency to 10 and get that up, then that's the only real choke point, right? That one.
Yeah, that's the only
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
That's the only structure recommended. So the rest of it, is a trail in the woods. I also like when you have a contractor and they start building the trail, they're gonna lay out this boardwalk exactly. Here are the abutments, and so this thing might end up being 88 feet long, not 100 feet long, and so there might be
Right.
some cost savings there, right? So, it'll. So I'm always trying to kind of err on the like, okay, let's be conservative. Obviously, this was a design project, so I took tape out and I measured and looked at stuff. So there's a cost estimate in that townwide feasibility study. That's like big round numbers for planning purposes. So, this should definitely work for the grant and for finding a contractor. But yeah, it is not a cheap project.
Time frame wise, if you start hiring contractors, how long would you think it should take them to finish this? What should we look out for? What do we put on the grant for time constraints?
I'm gonna take a note to add some of that to the
It might be
So
in there.
the-
I didn't look close, but
I don't think I had anything necessarily in there.
saw some with
My-
1, 2, 3 years, 3 years, 5 years. But
The feasibility study
Actually
probably
have
had
to
some
spend
like
money.
long timelines type stuff, but
what's your experience show though? Is this trail
we
doable in a season?
oh yeah, this is it depends on the size of the crew, but most for a trail like this that's aggregate, most of your like crews that have people who know what they're doing and have the equipment, like a half mile a month,
Okay.
would be very doable. Potentially even a little quicker than that. So
Your companies, the local.
I don't think this is a project that should take much more than like 3 months,
So do you think that we would need to make any adjustments if we wanted to use this for cross-country skiing in the wintertime? Besides the bridging, would we have to make other adjustments to the plan? It doesn't need to be super wide, but, we would need to have a skiable lane that's 8 to 10 feet wide, probably.
And you could have the occasional pinch point that you squeeze through,
Yeah.
but in general, you'd want it about that. So, is it
The
a
other-
raised trail?
Yeah.
Or if it's a
current-
raised trail, then it needs to be wider. If it's not a raised trail, then it doesn't necessarily have to be wider because the
Right.
corridor will be wide enough.
So if you look at, again, if we just look at that P3 map, page 27 of the PDF itself, all of that red hatching,
Yeah,
line type,
Yep.
that was recommended as turnpike, which is, raised tread.
okay. So that's the area we'd want to really look into having it 10 feet. The rest of it, the corridor is wide enough. For
So-
winter time, frozen ground grooming, but if it's raised and the snow's not great, here, snow's
Yeah.
gonna be pretty good this year.
If you regularly got feet and feet of snow, I'd say it wouldn't be a problem because the turnpiking is recommended to be, I believe, 6 to 12 inches. I mean, it's not like the trail has to be raised feet above the ground.
6 inches isn't much, but getting up to 12 inches, that can be noticeable.
No, and I'm pretty sure I recommended 12 inches because it should be,
Yeah,
trail should be constructed a minimum of 6. So I recommend a minimum of 6. The thing is, generally, a lot of times when you're doing turnpiking, you're building rock walls. So if you go to that that detail sheet, D1. And you'll have to zoom in a little bit, but there's like a typical turnpike cross section. And it shows the two options where you can have anchor stones or you could have a 3-to-1 fill slope. So you might want to have that fill slope instead of anchor stones on your turnpike, which will make that transition. That would be page 28 of the PDF.
Yeah.
And then thought I had a picture in there. So, yeah, if you look at the page 21 of the PDF, it's labeled page 19 at the bottom right corner. There's a little picture. You know, that's a short section of turnpiking with culverts.
I mean, that looks like something we have need.
So those sections we can definitely recommend wider. That's gonna
Mhm.
drive that.
I saw you did the same thing I did.
Noticeable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Some perf pipe here. Maybe this is the orchard, this is the wood line. Right. Cool. Turn it in, get a grant, start building, let's do it.
So,
Should we specifically ask to have it increased to 8 feet or something through that section?
If
Yes.
it was something we could ski on, we would use it for my class, like the outdoor ed class would use it. We've done it for how many years now? 3, 4 years. So that would be good. The community would probably use it if it's all subtle grade, when the snow's right. And
how much would that add?
I don't think it's gonna add much to the
It's just that
some
many
area.
feet was-
aggregate.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How many feet would that be to?
That's turnpiked.
So pretty much just the red areas would have to be
Says it
wider.
Down here, I think,
Yeah, the red areas would be wider.
1,185 feet. It's on the tables page. That's, but I don't know how much it costs.
I would, it's hard for me to dig into like the Excel spreadsheet because there's so much going on, but I can put together a cost, I gotta
Yep.
figure out the new volumes essentially, which is,
Right.
it's just some more aggregate. It's not like the labor cost jump a ton. Someone's already
Yeah,
out
it's
there
just
building
The
trailers.
perimeter's staying the same, yeah. You guys wanna vote on that? You guys-
I suppose it may make the corridor a little bit wider, but that doesn't mean there's necessarily much more work to.
No, I mean, you doubling like the width of a trail doesn't necessarily double the labor involved in that. Someone's already out there doing a whole bulk of work. So it certainly adds cost.
Basically, it's still the same length of.
It's the materials. Yeah,
Yeah, the biggest the jump in cost is just going to be more stone needed because now you're making the turnpike 3 feet wider, right? So there's a volume of stone involved in that. And a little bit of time for someone to move and place that stone, but really the biggest cost is probably going to be the stone.
Those aren't huge areas.
So Steve, the rest of the area where you're not actually doing the turnpiking, there is still gonna be gravel added along basically that whole trail system. Is that correct? Even though it's not being built up, you're just at least making.
Yeah, so in those instances, we recommend you just basically box out a trench.
Yep.
6 inches deep, pour your aggregate in there, spread all the stuff you dug out, spread that on the side.
Yep.
Dress it up nicely, clean it up and naturalize the site, but yeah. Not building up. So those built up areas are just so wet. And when we were out there, we talked about that there's surface water out there at times. And so even, if it was a different type of trail, If it was more wildernessy, I'd say, oh, it's okay. As long as the tread is firm, you won't have any, the tread won't get degraded and people might get wet feet every once in a while. But we're talking about, hey, this is students, this is the community, people are gonna be out there all the time. So let's raise the tread up. That way in the spring, if there's 2 inches of water sitting on the ground in those places, well, the trail is above it and you can use it in the spring and you're not wondering, why can we only use this trail like in the bone dry month of August?
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Who spent all this tax money?
Mhm. Oh, exactly.
And that trail, basically, the tread you're talking about would be 5 feet wide for everything else, but it would still be level, like in terms of like cross country or whatever, you're gonna have.
Yep.
paths
In some
on another-
locations, we can clarify opening up the corridor, but going back to that P3 map, which is essentially that's showing all the prescriptions. That's your detailed map. The pink is like where it seemed like there was some natural drainage. So all the culverts are the blue stars. Pink is where we recommend some uphill ditching, just to kind of help facilitate getting some of the water away from the trail. And so in those cases, you'd have a linear hole essentially on the uphill side of the trail. If you had good snow, it would fill, but the downhill side of the trail would be even with the ground and have that wide corridor. I can add to the descriptions, basically, hey, in places where there's uphill ditching, open up more corridor downhill so that we can facilitate wintertime use, specifically, skiing.
Yeah, so I think going with the turnpiking, we would definitely want wherever those culverts are to be 8 feet as well, right?
Yep.
So that,
I mean, that's pretty much the minimum that you could get by.
Right.
Skating.
It's like-
8 or
I like to
10,
have
yeah.
twice- I like to have like 15 feet normally, but I can't see asking for a 15-foot wide trail.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But it does make sense because like that doubles the amount of use the trails will get every year. Like they're year round now. That's a big difference. Like. I don't know. I like-
Sorry. I was gonna say all the culverts were recommended to be 8 feet minimum in length, so that you have, but in those places where we want the trail to be 8 feet, I'll bump up the recommendation on the culvert. My guess is like, if I was a contractor bidding on this, I'd probably buy a bunch of 20-foot sticks and just cut them in half and everything would be a 10-foot culvert, but
Mhm.
I didn't want to say you needed a 10-foot culvert everywhere because that would increase the cost. So, yeah, I will make sure to clarify that, hey, we need wider culverts on the turnpiking because we're widening the turnpiking essentially. Jotting down my notes here.
Okay.
Trail at all if it's too narrow.
think so. I think there's nothing from there. Up on the left hand side.
It was okay.
Steve, have you heard anything more from the RTP folks in terms of what their timeline's looking like?
I am sitting on a call with a bunch of folks to go over guidance recommendations and supposedly they have found so one of the hangups was they were worried they found out they couldn't use the bond to hire anyone and they were obviously hoping to have someone at BPL administer this entire program, but I think they've jumped that hurdle. And they found some other funding. So as far as I know, Doug is either hired or is hiring some new folks. And they should be launching soon. All indications that the state has given is they still intend to award money this year. My hunch is it's going to be more towards the end of this year than the fall that everyone was hoping. My hope is they can get money in the hands of people so they can use it in 2026. It was probably going to be hard to use the money anyway this year for a lot of people. If you if you didn't get money if you got money in September, it's going to be hard to spend it. So, but my hope is, if they're giving out money in November, December, people are able to find contractors and line up work and get work done in 26.
So that's for the grants, the larger grants. is what-
Yes.
That's the trail bond. Yeah.
That would be a good timeline.
Yeah, that doesn't put, move it back a couple of months.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Because we couldn't realistically get it done this summer,
No,
which
we
would be the
weren't-
work
we
of the
weren't.
summer anyway, so, yeah.
That's fine. Anything else?
Oh, I was gonna ask about permitting. What is a good timeline to reach out to? Like is this enough? Like, we talked about like Maine DEP potentially would be the,
We had a
DEP
couple of-
is, I would reach out to your code enforcement officer. You're not,
that's the one really.
well,
It seems like it. I did a quick Google search.
we're on the edge of,
Just Dave Shaw,
of
yeah.
the- there's a stormwater exemption from
Yeah.
DEP, for what's known as like a construction general permit, where you would need some sort of stormwater pollution prevention plan. Maine has an exemption, for trails, as long as they don't get too wide.
Mhm.
We are right at the upper limits of that, so we wouldn't want to get too much wider.
That's fine. We've got a pretty good, as far as stormwater goes, we've got a pretty good relationship with Cobbessy Watershed District. And a
Perfect.
guy named Bill Monagle's the guy who does their analysis. And if he wants a formal presentation, we could do that, but he's usually pretty
I
sensible.
think
Yeah.
we should invite him to a meeting.
Yeah, or go meet with him and show him the proposal, and as long as he's
Yeah.
comfortable, I don't think he's gonna get his shorts in the knot.
I am no longer a stormwater engineer, but I was one when I first got out of college, and yeah, I have found that most of the permitting around trails, once you actually talk to people, and talk to them about what you're doing, they're like, oh, okay, this makes more sense. Because you start looking at numbers and it's like, we're gonna disturb this much earth. Oh, but it's like, it's a linear disturbance, and
Mhm.
it's much different than like a parking lot.
Mhm.
Right, you're not
Um,
concentrating a whole lot of runoff all in one spot.
Yeah, the whole like going back to that half rule that I mentioned about why we can't make trails, all of the guidance that we have for sustainable trails is about getting water off the trail quickly and like spread out, because that's the number one issue with trail maintenance, right? Is erosion. So, and DEP, they would be your what would be called a permit by rule, your PBR, that would be crossing any stream, but we're not there's no streams here. Again, I'm not a stream biologist, but I saw no indications of any actual what would be classified as a stream on this property. So you could run that by some folks at the town if you wanted to double check. And then there's no, from what I can tell, there's absolutely no streams and wetlands around, so there's no buffers to worry about. But again, be good to check with your cone and then, yeah, you're not in shoreline zoning. So those are the permits you typically trigger with trails.
But makes it easier.
Steve, while we got you on the phone, what question or two on the community-wide survey?
Oh yeah, yep, I got that one pulled up too.
So,
So.
you had identified one of the landowners there as
Oh,
Roche?
yeah, definitely correct me on any of that stuff.
I don't think anybody was familiar with that.
Yeah,
I
I think we found where that came from, but we don't know why it came from
Right, you
there
saw
because
your app
we
map.
know
Yeah. On the,
that's not who we think owns the property.
I thought I pulled it from the town GIS website.
It is written online because Dave found it on his, what was the app called?
on X.
Onyx had it as the same
Yeah.
thing you had it, so he
And
just
that's,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
I use Onyx, but you do have a town GIS, right? Yes, you do. I didn't make that up. Yeah, if I click on that parcel, Peter, or not Peter Bouchard, that's the one you know?
Right, that's good.
Yeah.
Wendy Brochu, who owned like
Yeah,
the
that
actual
one's
tree
not good.
farm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just have to talk to the person we thought owned it and find out who the other person is.
Mhm.
Because maybe he sold it to her, maybe it's a gifted land and he just manages it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
What's the address on that property? You know?
117 Prescott Hill Road. Of course, yeah, it also says it's 1.8 acres on your town GIS website.
LLC and Vision Appraisal.
Yeah. Yeah, on our town assessor's website, Vision Appraisal, it says Apple Mountain LLC.
Which is updated, I think, every April 1 or something.
Yeah. Yep, I see that. Yeah, I don't, unless I'm asked, I don't do really deep deed research into like the
Yeah.
county register of deeds, so that would definitely be something for you to check out. But I certainly want to make sure we have, folks' names and everything right in there.
Yeah.
So if maybe if you guys don't mind digging around and letting me know.
Right above that, it does say Wendy Brochu for 117 Prescott Hill as well.
Oh, yeah, for the other property?
No, it says 117 Prescott Hill, Wendy Brochu, as well as Apple Mountain LLC.
Oh, they're co-owners?
There's like two different people for that same address.
There are.
Huh, yeah, it's mapped out a little different.
Which maybe she owns that house there, maybe,
Oh, on the
maybe he
property.
bought the orchard. She bought the house.
It's a Kate. Does it say how much property she has?
Says 1.8, I heard.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's just, that's the house. So I think it should be Apple Mountain LLC.
1.8 acres. That's what Wendy has.
I think you can change all the brochure stuff to Apple Mountain LLC.
Okay.
Search and replace option. Still make
Yeah,
that-
oh, I use that all the time, yeah. All right. Happy to talk about that one too, if there's other.
There's a couple little things. We'll shoot them off to you. I don't think there was one or two suggestions. Nothing big.
Awesome.
All right,
Cool, yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
thanks, Dave. We'll let you get back
Yeah,
to your.
yeah, I will, I'll get this stuff
Yeah.
over to you. And then, yeah, happy to answer more questions. And then, as you get into the actual filling out the application, the grant, if you've got some questions, happy to lend some assistance. So
Awesome.
cool. Great. Well, I will,
Thanks. Have a good
have a-
night.
so have a good one, guys. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
congrats.
See ya.
Bye.
Okay,
What's our next?
Now we can look at ourselves.
sorry,
Oh, just have the back of your head tonight.
what's that?
Yeah, it's okay, it's the best side of me.
Who's that gray haired guy?
No, actually,
So
I get a haircut and I was like, where'd that come?
Three boys. I'm starting to turn around, I got two girls.
Just on the, while we're talking about the RTP stuff, so. I think we talked about last time, a couple of people were gonna see do initial check with some agencies.
Yeah.
Anybody do that homework?
I got my
didn't
homework.
connect with Brent.
This stuff I highlighted is what we have to work on for the main store preservation. Yeah, commission. There's our checklist for that. Reached out, wrote an email, and she responded and.
Great. Yeah, so you have electronic in this?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to just send it around to everybody?
Yeah.
And I think Catherine was gonna check.
Yeah, I forgot which one.
With other two options, there was three, right?
It was inland fisheries, and I think that was Chad.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
DEP permitting, was there?
I don't think that was.
But it's, no,
Yeah, I think
no,
Inland Fisheries was.
I'm trying to find it.
Do you have that check?
I got.
The code enforcement.
Who's the code enforcement officer?
Andy.
Updates.
Well, I thought he was still acting because we lost the CEO.
No,
again, and
but
he's
we
now
did for a little bit, but then Andy took over, and then Andy is now our plumbing inspector too.
Oh, okay.
I got the first.
No more Ernie. No more Ernie. Too bad. Ernie's a
It
good guy.
was any natural areas to keep them. Catherine.
Well, if you want, I can go talk to Andy,
Okay, great.
our Monmouth code guy.
That's great. That's great.
I'll take him, I'll show him the draft of what you just shared with us.
Okay,
Even though it's not perfect, he'll get a rough idea.
yeah,
We got mine,
yeah, that's great.
be comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't imagine it's gonna be.
I don't think it's good.
I mean, a lot of it's just fixing what's there. I mean, everything, almost everything is there. There's very short sections that are being added. So really, we're just fixing the drainage problem that's there.
Right.
Let's talk about the 1063.
1063.
So it sounded like a black hole when you talked to us.
Yeah.
Not getting anywhere, so I mean, I sent you an email about sort of how the hearing went, which was basically at the beginning, Steve said, we don't want to hear about other stuff. that we-" It's like a trail, so, and so,
But I heard you did a nice job of dodging the bullet and saying,
sort of-
we're not talking about trails, we're talking about traffic.
I tried to get a little, sort of a little
Just like,
wedge
let that one
there.
go right by. and
Yeah,
say,
there's
I'm
a
here to talk
traffic-
about traffic.
It's like, yeah, this.
Public safety and.
But it really is, I think it's a valid point,
It is.
it's a valid point, really, to keep people off the road, I mean, if you have 60 people there, assuming they're interested in doing some walking, from their house, they're
They're gonna
not,
go somewhere.
There's no sidewalks there.
yeah.
They're not providing sidewalks to there,
Yeah.
From
so,
there to the center of town, right?
But, and there's no, if they wanna
Still
get to the
understand.
sidewalk.
or even within, their own community.
I know, I want to be out.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
it's
right.
important.
Right, I mean, that's a pretty, walking community, that age,
Yeah.
55.
Especially when you downsize your house.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Buy a
yeah,
new house you don't have to work on.
yeah,
Mhm.
You gotta do.
so I don't know. What they'll do, I sent him, at the end of the meeting, I talked to Chris Gould. And, he said, well, we didn't want to talk to you guys because somebody was gonna get a lawyer. And it just sort of shut down, said, but now that the hearing's done, we can talk to you. But he hasn't talked, I mean, I said, okay, let's talk, and he said, well, send me the thing, I'll bring it to the thing. I said, well, I sent you one already. I said, here, it should be in this chain. If you needed to ask me, I'll send it to you separately again. And he never, so I'll keep trying,
Well-
I'm interested in your comments that you talked to somebody, the abutting landowners who's not interested.
oh, he was at the meeting. I can't remember his name. I think he was.
Yeah.
Someone.
So I've spoke with them since the meeting as well, and I think we're still on I think in time, there's still
What's it?
opportunity, right.
Is it? I thought it was right.
Yeah, shares her last name, a relative, but, and I think with time, I think their concern is us or people thinking that the existing snowmobile trail will be a walking path, and that's not the case. We had talked at one point about basically the back property lines is what I think as a group long-term is where we would look to potentially, where it's not gonna impact the landowner's use of their property.
Right.
Whereas a trail right down the middle of their property is gonna limit their use or
Right.
their, so I think that's really what
Especially
we
60
need to
people.
look at. Yeah,
60
exactly.
families.
I mean,
Right.
people that are hunters or whatever, or just whatever,
Right.
trying to enjoy their backyard and if there's.
Hey.
Exactly. So I think there's still opportunity.
Okay, good, good.
So
He was,
but obviously we haven't talked to any of the other landowners.
right,
And that specific landowner, like I said, been very cooperative with the snowmobile
Yeah.
club. They don't have snowmobiles, but they were very open to allowing us permission to try it out. It's gone very well. And I actually just met with them again this weekend to
Oh, good.
talk through some stuff, because we're just trying to move the trail so that it allows him to maintain his line over there with the new development and stuff going in, so. But like I said, I think
this,
with time, making sure that we're basically riding those back property lines, if other landowners are open to
Yeah.
it, that would be our best
Right.
avenue to try to get from that area to the school.
yes,
Where it's not gonna impact people's property and it's just gonna be super wet back there and it's gonna take building it up and putting culverts through in multiple spots, just so the water can hang out there. I think it's gonna be like going across a swamp really in some of the areas there, cause it's very, very wet. You know, it'd just be building it up so the water can naturally do what it always does and just sits there, but to walk through there, you need rubber boots and sometimes that might not be enough. So, and that's why the
Florida
trail,
Everglades.
and that's why the snowmobile trail
Leave a
doesn't
dinghy.
currently go through there. When we did reroute last year, we had some areas that would have to be frozen to drive through. What we had to do last year when we rerouted the trail, so.
so did you go to the comprehensive plan?
We did, actually, Chris and I were
Oh,
there.
you were, yeah, so did you mention sort of
Yeah, we talked about,
incorporating it into the
yeah,
plan?
major trails, talked about the possibility of diverting, well, first of all, connecting the 1063 thing into the main trunk idea. And then we also talked about potentially diverting up to Academy somewhere. You know, having, whether it's through Catherine's property or
Right.
something, but a way to get people away from Main Street, one way or another, with
Mhm.
bicycle traffic or with whatever.
And also they talk about in terms of the requirement for subdivisions going forward.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we discussed that some. If you're going to do a larger subdivision, there should be something built in. I feel, or we feel that there should be something that says you need to accommodate trails, you need to leave, or to have some sort of, or something.
You gotta plan for sidewalks.
Yeah, oh, so that's moving
Some
forward,
amount of
so
green space or something.
that's a new.
That would be sort of, yeah, so the comprehensive planning committee is sort of looking at sort of long range, sort of,
Yeah, so this is, these guys maybe aren't doing it, but future
it
divisions.
would be sort of,
Right.
okay, if they put that in the report, then it could go into an ordinance later,
I see.
then we would have some leverage later,
I
you
see.
know, like.
So the comprehensive plan is sort of the rough draft for the next 10 years and then,
Of what we want.
right, and then
The ordinance.
someone fills in the blanks, it could be the planning board or the select board. Comes back with, okay, here's the ordinance that satisfies the goals of the comprehensive plan. And that might be in year 2 or 3 or 4 or
Right.
whatever,
Mhm.
but they all sort of build on one another.
So did it seem to be well received?
Sidewalks are good.
Good,
Yeah, some pedestrian play.
great. Excellent, that's great. Thank you.
And there, by the way, just as an aside, and I don't want to go too far into new business, but there was a lot of brainstorming going on about additional sidewalk.
What kind of projects? Building projects or trail projects or?
We've got an Atlantis sidewalk on Maple Street. It's like disappeared, but it used to be there. And it's possible that that could become extending that Maple Street. I'm sorry, not Maple Street, Pleasant Street.
Thanks.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I know where you're talking
But
about.
extending
I
that,
didn't know where there was.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, well, it
I've
hasn't
seen
been
parts
touched in
of it,
60
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So extending that to loop around to the Maple Street
Cool.
connection is a possibility.
Yeah, cool.
Just an additional loop
Yeah,
to give people
that
some
makes
variety
sense.
and to connect the houses. Anyway, that was one idea. A couple of others. I mean, some people were like, well, we'll just send a sidewalk all the way up Main Street.
All the way up to 1060.
Yeah, and I'm like, do you know how much that's gonna cost? Right?
It'd be nice to get a shoulder.
Yeah,
I
that's,
can't
that's,
imagine a sidewalk.
Yeah.
I'd like to do that. I mean, I think if after we get this in, I think it would be good to go
Well,
to DOT. and-
So
Yeah.
if this doesn't work, then there's more fuel to put a shoulder in,
yeah,
right?
sure,
Like, hey,
sure.
Yeah.
there's no trails here and we're getting a lot of
Right, and we get people,
pedestrian music
yeah,
moving on Main.
so then you put DOT between a rock and a hard place. You say, well, you can either lower the speed limit or put a sidewalk in.
Mhm.
Academy Road's 30 miles an hour from Main Street to here.
Why?
Yeah, seems fast.
Yeah,
It's like, you can't get any more residential than that.
yeah, it really should be
I'm
25.
surprised.
If you want to bring that up at a select board meeting, I think the select board actually controls that,
Do they?
not DOT. Because it's a
I was
total.
wondering, I was wondering if it was because the town, your town garage didn't want to go 25.
No, but I mean, that's negotiable. That's actually very negotiable because we have our own police force.
Right.
We get to enforce it pretty carefully. And
I'll wait till my kids stop driving.
if someone,
Yeah, mine's fine.
if someone wanted to bring that forward to a select board meeting, that would be fine.
I would go, I can do that.
Yeah.
I run on that street.
But you're right. I mean, well, and we built the sidewalk now where there are kids walking and biking and.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it's sort of continuation.
I remember, when I was in high school, we used to walk in the street, like there was barely a shoulder. And people would go flying by with like plow blades. you know?
On the horse and buggies.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see,
Cross-country trails.
anything on the cross country, anything to talk?
I had a question on the cross-country trail stuff. The cross-country trails, if we should, Dr. Christian, but should we have a name for the trail system? Like Whittier Woods has a name. Should we have a name for the trail system, the cross-country ones? I know it right now it's Prescott Hill and Sanborn Fields, Nordic Ski Trail map, basically, but I don't know. And we'd have to check with them probably, but
Turn it into a contest.
Yeah, that'll get people involved.
Facebook contest.
Oh, yeah.
I like the way he labeled the trails.
Trail
in
face.
the-
Yeah.
It was, I thought what he did in terms of the nomenclature was pretty clear, you know, how he had.
Mhm.
yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
Something to
I
ponder.
mean, I don't mind having a name. It seems like that would be good, but
Would that be the winter names and there'll be like summer names for like?
Oh,
like
yeah.
trails? Just
For the
flip the
trails.
signs around.
for the trails, maybe.
No, but they fold open.
Just the trail system should have a general name.
Yeah.
I was just thinking Prescott Hill Trails for now, but.
Right.
um,
You guys should
but we
combine all our
can-
names and come up with a new acronym. So
I know. Not very creative that way.
Pretty lame, actually, when I come up with names like that, so.
I haven't named the trails yet.
Yeah.
I
Snow.
mean, there's names on it.
Summer.
Back trail, front trail.
There you go, back and front.
Right. Kiosk is up, map is printed. Plexiglass is at the house, just needs to get the screw holes drilled in it and get put up. At some day when it's dry and daylight and we're home, Sam and I,
Where's that gonna be? Is that?
it's gonna be at Prescott Hill, at the tree farm.
Is that where they put, I think, that post and stuff?
Yeah, the post is there now, little green roof that Sam put up, so it's getting closer.
It's happening.
Yeah. And we need snow. We got these
We're just
little
having wheels.
3 inches, come on. These
Come up
little
with the
maps will get
mosquitoes
put
that
on
are
the
on
trail
the
in different spots. Or suggested spots to put the maps, and then we have little QR stickers on them.
You aren't here.
The guy from Smiley Hill Farm was on the radio.
Are they open?
No, they shut down.
Oh,
They closed up their,
ski stuff.
they closed the shop up, basically. Couldn't make a go of it.
Stick with milk.
Yeah. He said you need like 5 weeks to make it. Just getting it.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Snowmobile's not ready yet.
No. That's-
They were trying to finish it up today and we tried to put some parts in, but realized one of the parts was wrong. Need to order another part.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk with you. If you do end up needing a sled or whatever, we'll bring one of the club sleds over just so you can use that until the other one's ready or
Thank
whatever.
you. I'm gonna be,
I don't know if you get enough snow for
I won't be able to
Anything
go
over
next week, so if we do get any snow, somebody else could. It's cold.
Cold is in the forecast.
Yeah.
Not snow.
Cold's in the forecast, but nothing falling.
Nah, not much.
Doesn't look good.
Go out and hose and spray it.
All right, any other old business?
you can ice down a course, ice skate on it. maybe.
There you go.
Okay, let's, go and do, figure out our meeting. So we have one scheduled for the 4th. The following, the 3rd Wednesday would be the 18th. Which is president, that's vacation, school vacation. I'm gonna be gone for.
In and out that week.
I'm leaving early Wednesday morning, so I don't know if I could make the Tuesday night.
That week, the 18th. You wanna just skip that one?
To the 20, oh, skip it entirely.
Let's go to the,
Good, 4.
go to the 4th, March 4th.
So February 4th and then March 4th.
Yeah. See. No, we could do April 2, same thing, so.
Filming that day.
April 1st.
Trails committee on the, February 4th is 7, right? We're starting at 7.
Yeah.
And then March
4th.
March 4th. March 18th. April 1st. April 15th. Sound good. And that's, we avoid I think the February
It is Ramadan.
break, and the April break is the 21st, right?
I'll check that one back there.
We got
February 4th, March 4th. What was the next one?
March 18th.
March 4th, March 18th, April 1st.
And then you know what, asking April break is
Oh, is that it?
21
Is
to
that-
21 to
Okay,
25.
so the 15th. Right. That's good. Okay. Sounds good. I'll try to get a hold of Chris Golden.
So
Is there
did
another?
Kat send out minutes from the last meeting? Because I did not get them.
It's on the Google Sheets.
So she didn't send out.
She didn't send.
I didn't share it?
I asked her, because I think I said, I thought I was like, I'm stupid and I didn't know that stuff, so I said a couple hours before the meeting, I said, where, how do I get to you, the Google thing? And then she sent me the link, which I never had before. I'll send you the
Can you
link.
send one?
Yeah, I'll send the link to everybody.
I can read it online. but-
Yeah, there are a couple of things I think we might wanna edit.
We can do it the next
Shoot
meeting.
and stuff I said.
Yeah, sure. It's a little too literal. It's like Steve seemed agitated. We don't need that.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank
you.
I'll send out the email to the link to, with the.
Yeah.
That one committee sent me.
Places
Yeah.
to.
Is there anything else? I'm thinking, once
He must have, he didn't want
we
to.
get more information on the application and send it and maybe get an answer back, then I can start reaching out to Chris Riley,
Okay.
Will Libby, some trail builders. To say, this is what we're looking at, this is what we've got.
This is my,
If you have any suggestions as to maybe help us curb some of the
So that's
costs,
midway.
through your experience, what would you do this section of trail? I can reach out to those people.
I'm calling this double cross.
Well, you know, one of the
Two
things
different
that
streams.
this is sort of what. Maybe part of what you said, sure, it's like Doug mentioned. He'd rather see a project application where the costs maybe are a
This is,
little
is
bit
this the,
on the high side.
that's where I did all the
And
work right here.
somebody who feel like lowballed it, because what you wound up with having is problems like, oh,
I'm calling Midway.
we don't have enough money to really do this.
Well, that you have a partially successful project and then people bitch,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want people to.
No, you want-
And if if we've got a little leftover money, I know exactly how we're gonna spend it.
We can figure out, it's always a good problem, right?
Yes.
Problem to have.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Thank
See you,
you.
Ken. Thank you. What's Steve's last name again?
I could see a wooden,
Yeah.
like,
K
half inch plywood.
A E C C A.
Okay.
Good night.
You want them.
Okay, yeah.
We can stack them up on a tree and just staple.
Staple this to that
Yeah.
and then use the aluminum nails.
RSU two.
Should we check with this, if that on it, we should be fine with that.
You guys need more building materials and stuff like signs and stuff. I still have some left over. from my
Thanks. Yeah, we were gonna get over there
I
and
got
look at it, and then we ended up
and stuff.
not. I guess. With the stuff that I had, just kicking it out.
This we need to.
It'll be really cool is once this really starts moving, figure out a way to like have a shed or something that the trail committee has like equipment in, they could be
Chris, are you gonna be here
accessed by
tomorrow?
the different, you know, like I'm also thinking that would be
Beach-friendly?
cool too. We had a snowmobile.